The tales of Odin are some of the most recorded stories within Norse mythology as it still survives today. And many people know the aspects of Odin, including the warrior, the wanderer, the wizard. Today, we're going to be talking about a lesser known aspect and a lesser discussed aspect, and that is both how Odin is tied to shamanism, but also to psychedelic plant medicine experiences. So go ahead and strap yourself in, psychonauts and Norse pagan enthusiasts, as I take you along this journey discussing Odin's connections to plant medicines. But also I'm going to be sharing my experiences with you here around this fire that I've had with psychedelics and how they've made me feel more connected to the Norse god of wisdom, Odin. This video sponsored by 4 Visions. Many people connect to Odin from the warrior aspect. They get muscular, they train to fight, they wrestle. But people usually connect to Thor during that. So maybe it's more of like the Ulfhednar, the Berserkers. There are all these things where people connect to this more madness, war aspect of Odin. I think this is a very young aspect of Odin. When you look at the stories and the chronological tales, you can definitely tell that there is more of a younger version of him that is more warlike, especially during the time of the Aesir-Vanir Wars. And then there's the wandering aspect, the one I connect to personally, obviously with my hat and my cool poncho. But the wandering aspect is the one I think many of us connect with. They connect to this Gandalf presence that Odin has. I think this is also kind of parallel to the psychedelic aspect, is he was a wanderer because he was trying to gather wisdom, because he was trying to learn more about the world, learning ways to stop Ragnarok, ways to predict the future, but also ways to challenge himself. We see this in one of the stories where he hears there's a wise giant and he needs to go and speak to the giant and test his wisdom. And I think there's kind of like this element that Frigg's like, oh, fine, go do this. And then he has this wisdom battle with this giant and ends up winning. So he felt that he needed to test himself against other wise beings. And then Odin also went to many different places. And one of these places was the Well of Mimir. And at the Well of Mimir, he had to sacrifice something in order to drink from the waters, in order to gain the wisdom from the waters. Now that sounds pretty psychedelic to me, and especially after doing ayahuasca in particular. There's something you sacrifice to do ayahuasca. It's a painful experience, it's hard, it's strenuous, and you drink something. You drink something from a bowl, and that's all I could think of when I was having this experience is like, oh, this is something Odin would have done as I received the bowl of this nasty liquid. And you almost have to ask yourself, before you do ayahuasca, what am I willing to sacrifice to do this, to gain this wisdom? And it's funny when people ask me now, it's been 6 months since my ayahuasca experience in Ecuador, and people ask me, how was it? And I always correct them, and I say, no, how is it? Because it's still going on. You still learn lessons from it. And I think that's true of many different psychedelics, not just ayahuasca. And so I think with this aspect of Odin, it's an important one because there's a lesson there, is if you're looking into getting into psychedelics, I would warn you, like before you got into them, if you asked me, like, Jacob, I want to do ayahuasca the first time, I would say, what are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to go through to gain this knowledge? It is very beautiful and wonderful things that you learn, but there is a sacrifice to it. And it's quite painful. And the things that you learn are, wow, just incredible. And seriously, I can't, it's so hard to imprint this experience onto you. But seriously, after going through this experience, all I could think of was Odin and Mimir as well. Very, very much connected. But there's another aspect to Odin that is very shamanic. And that's also going to be a parallel here. We're going to see a lot of shamanism. We're going to see a lot of things connect between Odin and this path. And in another story, in Grimnismal, we have Odin once again sharing wisdom with us, testing himself, maybe against his will. But one of the things in this story is that Odin was tied between 2 fires, starving, thirsty, fasting, and he's given a drink from a boy, and because of this, he gives this boy a bunch of wisdom. And so we see a trial of fasting, a trial of sacrifice once again. And for myself, I'm about to go on a vision quest here very soon. I'll be making a video about that as well, I assume. And part of the vision quest is fasting for 4 days. The wisdom that you have after that. I'm being thankful for that drink of water, that drink of mead, something to quench your thirst, to satiate your hunger. But this is not the first time we see Odin fast. It's not the first time we see Odin sacrifice his comfort for wisdom. And then we have the story of Odin hanging from the world tree, starving, thirsty, pierced by his own spear, sacrificing himself to himself, all so that he could take up the wisdom of the runes. Now it's crazy because we're like, ooh, that's a long fast. But I've heard stories in my travels of people who have fasted for 14 days. Humans who have fasted for 14 days. No water, no food. It's not something I recommend you do right away. It's not something I'm going to do. But again, we see evidence within Odin's story of him going through these experiences, of him sacrificing to gain wisdom. And so much of the psychedelic, shamanic experience is sacrifice. I figured also in this video I would kind of impart some of the wisdom I've been shared. I mean, this channel is called the Wisdom of Odin. I didn't realize how important that would become later into these years now as I continue this wandering journey and learning from amazing individuals. So much of who I am as a person spiritually is because of the amazing people who have taught me along the way, and many of which do not happen on video. So in the case of this video, I want to share with you some of the lessons I've learned along the way as well. And so when it comes to the creation of fire, obviously I have used a candle, I have used a lighter, I have used cardboard. I'm sure there's some survivalists out there that are like, oh, you need to make a fire like a real man. To me, the most important thing about a fire is making it sacred. And one of the ways we do that is by offering tobacco. So tobacco is something I've learned from the indigenous tribes of South America, but also of North America as well. So giving tobacco as an offering to the fire. You can give other things. Cedar is also big. You can do cedar to the fire. And so the way I was taught to do that is taking the tobacco, facing east and presenting it, then south and presenting it, and then west, then north. One time to your forehead, another time to the heart, also to the land, to the sky. Reflect on gratitude. And then give to the fire. And also reflecting on the lessons that fire teaches us. I mean, fire was the first teacher to so many of our ancestors, probably to all of our ancestors. Because fire is one of the most important things. It allows us to stay warm, allows us to have light, allows us to cook. There's so many things that fire allows us to do. Oh, and it gets in our eyes. Oh. Now you might also be thinking, Jacob, they didn't have ayahuasca in Scandinavia, so Odin probably didn't do ayahuasca. Well, I would also say that Odin was a traveler. It is said that he traveled all the realms, and so if he would have traveled Midgard, he would have traveled to South America and he would have done ayahuasca. But to go along with that and answer that question, the plant medicine that the Scandinavian people would have probably used, if they did use one, was more than likely mushrooms. And we don't know what those ceremonies would have looked like. And it is now up to us to kind of try to recreate what those would have looked like. And I think that's with like the calling to directions, using Old Norse, trying to bring as much Scandinavian elements into a plant medicine ceremony with mushrooms would be the way to go. I don't know quite what that would look like, but that's what that process would be. And that's how you would keep a plant medicine ceremony more akin to the Scandinavian world. But that is not as important to me. What's important to me is respecting the plant medicines, no matter where you're doing them, no matter who you're doing them with. Respect these medicines. They have a spirit. Respect the teachers. Respect the lineages. And as long as you go into these things with gratitude, with respect, with humbleness, you're going to be okay. And you're going to have a beautiful experience. So I hope that makes sense and hope that helps. So we do need to take a sponsorship break. This is the first time I've ever accepted a full sponsor for this channel. That is 4 Visions. So 4 Visions is an apothecary supplier of plant medicine essentials. So obviously not things like ayahuasca, but things such as hape, which is something that has really helped me in my life and my spiritual journey. They also have a lot of different plant medicine resources that are free for you to check out as well. So I'll link their website down below. And if you want to look into experiences such as ayahuasca, hape and cacao. And then for people that aren't interested in hape, they also do have different things like this is a cleansing water that just smells really nice, but you can use instead of smoke and incense. If you don't like necessarily using this, or if you don't have the ability to burn, you can use something like this to actually purify and cleanse yourself as well. If you want to purchase anything from them, you can use my discount code, I think it's just Jacob15, to purchase anything, and I think it's also tied to the link down below, and then any purchase also obviously helps my channel as well. But with that, let's go ahead and return to our conversation on Odin. In a previous video, I also talked about the importance of intuition, is that my theory on Odin is that Odin is the personification of intuition within ourselves, the spiritual version of intuition. And by wandering, by doing psychedelics, by having these Odinic experiences, we hone our intuition. And my personal experience on this, after years of wandering now, of learning from various different teachers from many different traditions, not just Norse, is that this is so true, that I feel I can trust my intuition so much more about what to do, and especially to my American audience, into Norse paganism, shamanism, paganism in general, whatever. I feel like there's definitely this overemphasis on the books because that's all we have. We just have the book knowledge. But it's so important to remember that this was an orally passed down tradition. All of these were orally passed down traditions. And so there have been slight variations all the time. It was constantly evolving and changing based on the individual's intuition. Of course, people can memorize stories. They can memorize tales of the gods. But these tales would change. These tales would evolve, be added on to. They were a living history. And I think that's the most beautiful part. And because of this break in the chain, which does exist, yes, there was people that continued on. I recognize that, especially in Scandinavia. But these stories were meant to be added on to. These stories were meant to change. And that's okay. And I think we're having a really hard time accepting that, especially in the Norse pagan world. Scandinavian mythology world, is we're stuck. We've forced ourselves to live in the Viking age and be Vikings. And because that was the last time we were pagans, and so therefore we must be pagans similar to the Viking age. And this is just simply not true. I think another really amazing thing about Odin's story is how many stories we have. The life that we know, beginning with the forming of Midgard, with the death of Ymir, going all the way to Ragnarok, is the span of Norse mythology. And Odin is more or less the main character of this story throughout. And one of the most prominent and important books in Scandinavian mythology and in Scandinavian belief today is the Hávamál. And all the Hávamál is what I picture as a very old Odin, who has been through his warrior stage, through his wandering stage, through his psychedelic stage, who is very much on the cusp of the end of his life, giving knowledge to Lotfafnir, to anyone who will listen to them. And I think the Hávamál as well is another great example of oral storytelling, where people more than likely added in their own pieces of wisdom throughout the story. And so I think it probably started quite small and then expanded as each person retold. And I think we see this within the stories around plant medicine circles. And this is another lesson that I've learned, is that a lot of the times when you go do these experiences, it's to listen and to learn from those teachers. Not only the plant medicine teachers, but the people giving you the medicine. I did end up doing peyote as well this year. And the shaman, the medicine man that gave peyote, he told a story basically from the moment we began all the way through to the very end. And that's really powerful. And it was just the story of his family, the story of how he got his feathers, the story of how he got into plant medicines. It was emotional. He cried as we retold. He gave us wisdom, wisdom that I still remember, wisdom that I now share within a story. If you come around a fire with me at an event that I'm at, I will tell a story. And I'll more than likely cry. And a part of it is retelling his story within mine, adding my wisdom along with his and the other teachers I've had. And so my personal experiences learning from plant medicine teachers, the actual medicine men and women, is that it's about the story. And we see that within the Hávamál. It's the story of wisdom that has been returned and recycled and retold and added onto for hundreds, if not thousands of years around the central character that is Odin. And it's not Mimir's well. It is not the fasting that makes me believe that Odin is truly tied to psychedelics, to shamanism. it's the story of the Hávamál and the meaning and purpose behind the Hávamál. Because I think this is one of the most important texts in the world, because the knowledge and the wisdom in it still is important today and something that we can learn. And so an example ritual for you, if you want to plan your own ritual, is to memorize lines from the Hávamál and then add in your own. To sit around a fire with others and tell a story of wisdom, of Odin's wandering. Do something similar I'm doing right now. Is sharing wisdom with you on the internet around a fire. This to me is the core of Odin veneration. It's not the warrior, it's not the berserker. It's the wandering, it's the teaching, it's the learning. And we learn from people, we learn from the spirits, we learn from the gods, and we learn from plant medicines, much like Odin did. So I think with that, that is a beautiful way to end this video. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know your thoughts down below. Do you believe that Odin was tied to plant medicines? Please share one of your plant medicine or psychedelic experiences down below that you think would be beneficial to people reading it. And once again, I just want to say, if you're looking into getting into a psychedelic plant medicine experience, just be very cautious. Take your time, research, ask questions, find someone that one of your friends has gone to. I can recommend here at the very end, where I went to go do ayahuasca, is with Vidya. I will link them down below if you want to go check them out. They're people I trust. If it's something you want to do, I believe they're doing the next retreat in Ecuador. And so if it's something you want to look into, they're the people I trusted to do ayahuasca with. Again, go into this cautiously. Do not rush into this decision. But it's something that is calling to you, and you are interested, I would recommend Vidya. So look into them. Thank you so much for joining me around the fire, listening to my stories, my additions to the words of the High One, the words of the Wise One. And I hope these words spoke true to you and you've learned something, because I know I've even learned something being out here and having this type of video. I've never done anything like this before, where I was kind of doing a ceremony while filming. It was really interesting. So thank you so very much. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTuber stuff that feels odd to mention in a video like this, but truly, thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next video here at the Wisdom of Odin.